Yes, and now it's time to go to the next topic on this stage. For everybody that just entered for this particular topic, welcome on stage 3. If you do not know me yet, I am Koen Boomhuismans, Director e-commerce at DEPT. And the next speakers of the day will be Jonathan and Tim, and they will be talking about composable commerce. Are you there, Tim and Jonathan? Hello.
Hello.
Hi, Koen. Hi, everyone. Good seeing you.
So glad that you are here. And Tim, can I ask you a first question to kick off this second topic of this stage? It's maybe quite of an understatement to say that composable e-commerce is a trend since 2-3 years now in the world of e-commerce. Do you agree? And eventually, will all e-commerce platforms have this composable setup, or is it really a trend and will it kind of flatten a little bit and there will be two worlds with a non-composable and a composable setup? What's your opinion on that?
Yeah, very good question, Koen. I think that to answer that question, normally I would first dive into what composable really is. It might not be a term that resonates with everyone here, but let's say, assuming people know what, and the attendees who know what composable commerce is, I think that it's something that is not just a trend; it will stick, and you'll see more and more traditional implementations in e-commerce, but also outside of e-commerce, moving towards composable commerce. And realistically, I think, especially in the mid-market and enterprise segment, it is my belief that all will move to composable commerce setups in let's say 3 to 5 years time.
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you for this answer, and it did not surprise me because the next topic of the talk will also be composable e-commerce. So I can understand your answer here. To everybody who's listening to this topic and this talk, you can ask your questions via the chat. We will gather them and we will have a 5 or 10 minutes window for a Q&A at the end of the talk from Jonathan and Tim. But now the floor is yours. I'm happy to listen to this talk.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our talk today. My name is Jonathan Whiteside, and I'm the Global SVP for Technology and Engineering at DEPT. And I'm also joined today by Tim de Kamper, who's our VP for e-commerce in Europe. And what we're going to talk about, as just alluded to, is composable commerce. Specifically, the topics we're going to go through is, number one, what is composable commerce? What do we mean by it? What's everyone talking about at the moment? Secondly, when should you consider composable commerce? Thirdly, what are the challenges? You know, nothing is easy plain sailing. So what are the challenges that you would face? And then fourth, what are the solutions available in the market that can help you adopt a composable architecture as quickly as possible? So if we just go into the next slide, what is composable commerce? So as Koen mentioned, the term has got a huge amount of buzz in the market at the moment, and it seems to be a very big trend, predominantly promoted by tech vendors and analysts alike. DEPT has been working with a number of clients for 2-3 years, starting and helping them on the journey for composable commerce. So we've learned quite a lot about what it is and also what it isn't. And where we do see success and which organizations at the moment can see success with composable commerce, and then where the watchouts are and where you should carefully consider why perhaps you're not ready to move to that architecture at the moment. So from a definition point of view, what is composable commerce? Well, composable commerce is about selecting best of breed commerce technologies and solutions and bringing them all together to compose and build your own experiences. So previous to this, you would have a commerce platform, Salesforce Commerce Cloud, Magento, which historically have all been what is called monolithic systems, a single system where you would do everything and have access to all the different tools that you'd need to run your web shop. This is different to composable, where you will work with lots of different technologies, lots of different solutions, and bring them all together to do what you need to do. So move on to the next slide and over to Tim.
So next slide is around why would composable commerce be interesting for you, or let's say in general. Now, the whole idea about composable commerce is indeed, as Jonathan kind of explained already, is that there is hardly a single vendor available out there who can offer all of the applications that needed to deliver customer experience that adheres to the demands of today's customers. So as previous, you had a couple of vendors who were servicing e-commerce storefronts on all of the different applications and components that would normally serve a storefront. Think about search, think about merchandising, personalization, product cards, promotions, etc. However, you see that with, let's say, a higher maturity level, and as e-commerce is growing in general, that e-commerce players are looking to, let's say, specific vendors on areas which are better than what, let's say, the suite vendor can offer. So that's why composable commerce is getting more and more traction. Now, if you look at what it entails in terms of an architectural setup, you'll see, let's say, the suite vendor on the left side, where there would be one application, one system, one e-commerce vendor being responsible to fill all the features and functions in the blocks that you see at the left. Now, the second phase of commerce is a setup where front end and back end are decoupled. So that's a so-called headless setup. So you'll see that with bigger players, they would like to split up their teams between front end and back end teams, so that front end can relatively independently do releases, do deployments, and not be bothered too much by changes of the backend, and therefore can innovate faster than with a more monolithic setup. Now, composable very much is, let's say, the third version, where you see it here at the right, where not only the front end is decoupled from the backend, but the backend again is decoupled into several components like commerce, orders, content, customers, inventory, etc., where all of these components are served by specific vendors who are best of breed on that particular topic.
I think Gartner have done a very good job as well of explaining what this is or visualizing it in this this next diagram. The previous slide shows the evolution of commerce vendors and commerce architectures over the past, I would say, 10 years or so. But you can see how composable commerce solves the problem of having to manage multiple consumer touchpoints, multiple digital experiences on top of a number of different tools, which will then all go and talk to a set of common systems of record. And when we say systems of record, we're talking things like ERP systems, CRM tools, warehouse management systems. But as you can see, each element of this stack, each particular piece of functionality, each capability can be done by a separate vendor using a separate tool. So the content management system can be very different to the commerce engine. It can be very different to the search and merchandising system. But this sort of architectural approach encourages you to use many different tools and bring them all together at the presentation layer to orchestrate these different consumer touch points which you're going to be offering your products and your e-commerce offering.
Now, what are typical components which comprise the whole composable commerce setup? So in the previous diagram, you've seen already a couple of components, but generically, you'll see that our customers are more and more splitting up their whole e-commerce environment in specific vendors who can deliver best of breed content, CMS, search, for example. I think Algolia and Tweakwise are search vendors which resonate most in our part of the world. Merchandising, payment, shipping, taxation, product management, marketing automation, fraud, personalization, there's quite some more, but these are the typical components for which you see more and more customers are saying, I want best of breed for these particular topics. I don't want to rely on a single vendor who can do everything. It's not only just the best of breed, it's also a matter of being able to more quickly change certain items, change certain components in your architectural landscape without hurting, overhauling the whole system, which in a lot of cases are dependent on a certain component. So you have more agility to select a certain component, to change a component once you're not happy with it anymore, and then move on to your best of breed architecture. Now, what are the benefits that our customers see with composable commerce? I think, first of all, the flexibility to create differentiated experiences. With a monolith, a lot of things can be achieved, but in the end, you'll see that once you really want to customize your experience layer, you're bound to certain limitations. There's templates that deliver already a couple of functionalities, and you see that customizations are getting expensive. The agility to changing business requirements. So, for example, we have quite some customers who start with B2B and move to B2C or the other way around, or want to open new territories, and need to all of a sudden integrate different warehouse management systems or third-party logistics. Can that be done in a, let's say, more monolithic setup? Absolutely. Is it easier to achieve with composable? Yes, it is. Now, a third bullet, API first, headless, or MAC architecture. MAC stands for Microservice Architecture Cloud Hosted. So it's a concept which is getting more and more popular. And that might not be directly relevant to a business. So as a business owner, you would say, now, what do I care about API first and headless? I want my business to grow online, offline. However, talking to your IT department, you'll see that a lot of IT departments have embraced the API first and headless architecture as it adheres to their strategy, and which allows them to more easily couple things and integrate things together. And then last but not least, there's less risk of vendor lock-in. Of course, when you have one vendor who does everything, you're very bound to that specific vendor, and changing that vendor is a major impact on let's say, the e-commerce solution that you have in place. Now, what are the drawbacks in the experience? Of course, it's not only just nice and shining in heaven with composable commerce. There's a couple of drawbacks which we want to highlight and which stand out. First of all, there's multiple vendors and contracts that you need to manage. When you have a single vendor, then as Jonathan mentioned earlier, there's only a single throat to travel. So when things go wrong, with multiple vendors, you need to set up multiple contracts, and they need to be integrated as well. So therefore, you also need a higher organizational digital maturity to be able to handle those multiple vendors and realize and implement all those integrations that you need. It also requires a more complex architecture. As you see that all those components need to, well, not all of them, but quite a lot of those components need to talk to each other, need to be aware of what things are dependent on feeds, etc., and deliver the whole experience to the storefront. And then last but not least, there's also an additional, which is very much related to the previous points, additional engineering effort needed. What we see in general with our customers is that at least 30% of additional development capacity is needed to get to a composable setup and to make use of it. Want to take this, Jonathan?
Yeah. So what does it take? What do you actually need to build yourself? As Tim said, it takes additional effort. It takes a much higher digital maturity to be able to put these composable solutions together. So what does it take? Well, there's different layers. First of all, you've got to build the storefront yourselves. One of the benefits is having a differentiated customer experience, a differentiated customer touch points. But that does mean that you've got to differentiate it. You've got to create it yourself and custom code the storefront. Then we've got to do things and make sure that things like SEO is still running as optimally as possible. So we would have things like server-side rendering or SSR to make sure that the search engines still can find and see and read all the content that you're putting out there about your products. We want things to work fast, particularly in a multinational setup. So we need a content delivery network. We need to ensure that there's a way to manage editorial content. So have a content management system. And therefore, we need some sort of middleware solution through APIs to connect all these different systems, all these different best of breed systems together using that middleware layer. which comes as part of the third-party integration. So if we go to the next slide, we show a diagram. I'm not going to talk through it, but I think this just explains, this is a lot of work that teams would have to do to go and move to a composable architecture. There's a huge amount of benefits, but also having to build an architecture that looks like this, where we've got our business systems, our existing business systems at the bottom, ERPs, warehouse management systems, CRMs. We've got the services above, which are things like our CMSs, our product information systems, our e-commerce engines, our CDPs. We would then typically put a data access layer, a set of APIs, so a very common way to access that data from the backend systems. And then only on top of that, we start to build the differentiated front-end experiences, your websites, your mobiles, marketplaces. The benefit is, though, that once you have that data access layer in place, you don't need to know about all the systems in the background. You don't need to know what CMS it is. You don't need to know what e-commerce engine is. You're just saying to the API, hey, I want a list of products or details about a particular product. Go and get it for me, which does allow you to build those front-end experiences much faster than you would normally if you were bound to a particular backend system. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Jonathan. So the question now is, once you have decided to embrace this concept of composable commerce, would you need to build all of this from scratch? Which is, as mentioned before, more work than the traditional setup. Well, luckily, no, you don't. Because there is a new area of SaaS services, which is called front-end as a service. And front-end as a service basically stands for vendors who are diving into that area of having composable storefront and trying to build something which would speed up the whole implementation of particularly things which most e-commerce sites would anyway have. So let's look into what a front-end as a service exactly is. So it's a set of pre-built front-end modules. Think about a cart module or a mini cart module. Think about a product tile and a product listing. Think about filters, sorting. Think about let's say recommendation modules and these things. So front-end as a service vendors, they come up with solutions where a lot of these modules are pre-built, which can be leveraged by partners like us, or if you, let's say, have your own IT and development department, can use yourself. It comes with quite often with customizable UI, so it empowers also merchandisers and content managers to assemble these components and drag and drop them on the page through a page builder, which allows you to be in control. Whereas with a lot of, especially in the headless trend, you see that we've been speaking to customers who say it's great, the whole headless setup, and it allows us to innovate faster. However, the downside is very much that for a lot of changes, we need developers, whereas in the past, we could do it ourselves. Now, front-end as a service answers this need from the business. Then thirdly, there's a middleware involved. So there's an API gateway which orchestrates different calls from front end to back end, vice versa. And then there's hosting. So if you want to have, let's say, composable setup, if you want to have a headless setup, your front end needs to be hosted separately from the back end service. And that's where front end service comes into play as well. Now, this is an example from Vue Storefront. This is one of the vendors diving into that space of front-end as a service. And you'll see here that they come with certain UI systems, so that this design system and combined with the UI library. They provide a middleware, they provide front-end and a platform so that customers making use of Vue Storefront don't need to host it themselves. So it's all a managed environment which is ready to use and which requires far less project setup costs as you would normally have. Then this is a screenshot shot not only of Vue Storefront, but this is one of Frontastic, which is another vendor which comes to play. It has been acquired by Commerce Tools recently. And what you see here is the let's say page builder that Frontastic provides, and certain components that can be used and drag and drop on the canvas here in the middle. On the left side, you see things which they call Frontastic, which is basically Frontastic front-end components with certain variables and configuration options you see at the right. So these things can be used and empowers business users to say, these are the components I want to use on this page and that page, and a very visually rich experience on building your e-commerce storefront.
So what are the advantages? Why would you go for a front-end as a service approach when you're thinking about composable commerce? First of all, faster time to market. As we said, a lot of the plumbing, a lot of the connections to these back-end systems have already been done by the front-end as a service providers. So things, common integrations with popular CMSs, popular commerce engines are already done. So that plumbing, you don't need to do yourself, it's already done there. Secondly, resource saving. As I said, because a lot of work's being done, it reduces the engineering effort to only the stuff which is very specific to your organization. So that 30% increase in developer effort or engineering effort suddenly goes down significantly because a lot of the work's already been done for you. Thirdly, reducing the risk. So we have building integrations, getting systems to working together, as we know, has an element of risk to it. Projects or integrations often don't go well or don't go to plan. So having it already done reduces that quite a lot. And the last thing is, most of these systems, most of these providers already have a number of the front-end modules out of the box and ready to use, which means things like recommendations engines, things like product listings are already available for you to use and can be dragged and dropped on the page.
So basically, these front as a service providers, they open up composable commerce to mid-market and e-commerce players. So you don't necessarily need to be enterprise high-end in order to adopt a composable commerce. And that's, I think, one of the biggest benefits of front-end as a service. Now, I've already mentioned Fantastic View Storefront. Salesforce comes with its own setup called PWA Kit. It's a result of the Mobify acquisition, and they've recently renamed it to Commerce Cloud Storefront Composable. Next.js Commerce is another one, and DEPT, which is a more local player, that's familiar here in the Benelux. But you see there's multiple partners, multiple vendors coming into this space of front-end as a service, and which can be speeding up the implementation. Now, we have written a white paper, and here, let's say, a high-level overview of the benefits of certain vendors compared to some others. So I think that Fantastic comes with a page builder, which we've seen a screenshot of before, which is a good USP. Sales has a deep integration with Commerce Cloud with their PWA kit and View Storefront. The good thing about it, there's both community and an enterprise version available if you want to have more support and then manage runtime in it. But you could also go with the open source community version. So when you look at some strengths of Fantastic, you see that the focus very much on merchandisers. And some concerns that you might have, not applicable to all, is that with Fantastic or Commerce Tools, they still hold a very agnostic approach. However, with the acquisition of Commerce Tools, you'll probably see a shift where the focus is very much towards Commerce Tools and backend, and the integrations with vendors like Magento will probably get less focus. So with Salesforce, I think the strength is that they provide a managed runtime environment, so you really not need to bother with all the hosting as such. However, you need to be aware that not all Commerce Cloud features within Salesforce, think about SEO rules, page meta tags, are directly available in the composable storefront. So there's a big roadmap, there's a big push behind it. So we'll see more coming of it later. Then View Storefront, I think its strength is it's fully agnostic. So View Storefront does have integrations with Commerce Tools, with Sales Commerce Cloud, with Magento, I believe with BigCommerce. So in that sense, it's fully agnostic. It's a high number of pre-built integrations, which speed up the whole implementation. Good to know is that View Storefront is, as the name already suggests, based on Vue instead of React. So if you have a whole team of React developers, then View Storefront might not be the immediate best choice for your case. Now, as a conclusion, we would say front-end as a service gives you back the control to the business and allowing you to compose new experience using existing components and integration, freeing up engineers to develop new features. So basically all the drawbacks that we mentioned about composable commerce, a lot of them are solved with front-end as a service. And I think it makes a lot of sense, instead of trying to build your storefront from scratch with all the integrations that come up with composable storefront, look into one of these vendors or others. There's more out there than the ones that we've mentioned, but they will speed up the implementation and will give you freedom to focus on what you do best and where you make a difference compared to your competitors. Okay, that's it.
Thank you so much, Tim and Jonathan, for this talk. Now even I can explain what the benefits of composable commerce are and compare a little bit to monolithic systems like the traditional ones. And also the world is a little bit merging. I already noticed that in the final slides of your presentation. So thank you so much. People are requesting where they can find the slides, and I can tell them that this is the case. You can find the slides, those will be sent afterwards. Also, you can connect to me, to Jonathan or Tim via LinkedIn, and we can share the slides with you as well. So if you're interested, please reach out. I am going to share my screen because it's time to say thank you, Tim and Jonathan. Normally a big round of applause. Now it's just me who say thanks, and we'll see each other in the office. Thanks for now, and stay here, stay tuned, because next in line, Lisanne will talk about cookies. But thanks for now.
Thank you.